Hey, welcome. Today we're going to be putting a suspension air ride compressor on this GMC truck here. Now, the reason we're replacing this one is because ours is pretty loud, as you can hear right here. And it also has a crack here. It must have got some moisture in it, and we're assuming this is why this thing has failed. Now, looking at this compressor, it looks pretty complicated, right, as this whole assembly, but it's really not too bad to replace. It has a bolt here, 2 bolts on the side, and one thing about removing these bolts is you don't have to take the nuts all the way off. All you have to do is loosen them enough, and it kind of sits in a slot of the frame, and you just lift it out. Then we have what looks to be a filter here, an electrical connector, and then 2 spots where the air hoses connect to the rear air shocks. Now, before you start this job, you're going to want to make sure you get the wheels off the ground. And they doesn't have to be off the ground far, just enough where you can kind of spin the tires, because you don't want the load on the suspension when you start this job. Just make sure that you do this safely, get some jack stands under there, because you're going to be under the car for the rest of the repair. Now, our job is going to be a little easier because our suspension failed to a point where there's no pressure in the system. So we're just going to start by pulling the air hoses off the rear shock here. According to service information, you should be using a scan tool to depressurize these. Now that we have the air hose off the rear shock, the rest of the job is going to be underneath the vehicle, so let's get at it. Okay, so this is the air pump right here. You can see where it bolts to the frame, but we're going to start by getting this vent hose off, and this vent hose connects up here by the filler neck. So we're just going to use a trim tool here, and we have to release this little Christmas tree tab. Okay, we'll pull that down here. And you can see we still have to get it removed from the vent completely. We'll just hang that. See, now this is released. Okay, with that release, we're just going to start taking our bolts off. And remember, we don't have to remove these all the way. And these are 13 millimeter bolts, or nuts, I should say. And remember, our last one, we're going to have to go through this hole in the frame right here. Looks like my extension is too long. I'm going to have to grab a shorter one. Okay, so now with this thing loosened up here, you can see that it's still pretty tight on the frame. What I'm going to have to do is push these bolts in a little bit, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to grab a hammer here. Okay, so these bolts are kind of pressed into this metal piece right here. So what I want to do is I'm just going to tap here to try to back them up a little bit, because it needs to be able to slide out from the frame. You can see once they're released, this whole thing should come loose. Now, remember, before you bring this all the way down, we're still connected. One of the air hoses is still connected, and one of the electrical connector is still connected. So we don't want to pull it all the way down yet, but we're just going to slide it back and up, and we should be able to get it to release from the frame here. Okay, I got them. And there you can see it. Now, before we drop it down, we want to get our electrical connector removed. And this is our last air hose. And this air hose goes to the shock on the passenger side. So we're going to move the clip here. And then we should be able to pull this thing out of the car. Okay, before you start installation, it's always a good idea to put this clip back on, because this can be inserted with the clip on. It just has to be removed to take it off. Make sure you don't got any junk in your connector. Might be a little dust in there, just clean that out. Make sure it's ready to go. And then we'll get our new pump up here. Take this cap off and then just push this down until it clicks. Once you get a good click, you should be good. Now we'll get our electrical connector installed. Don't forget to put the locking tab back on. Should just slide right in. Okay, so now our electrical connector is connected. Should be able to put this back up. Now I'm going to start with the back and get this out of the way. And then slide it down. You see how it kind of just slides down, back and down, and it should lock in. We'll start by tightening up our rear bolt here. Make sure you snug these down pretty tight. Okay. Now we'll move over to our bolts on the other side here. And you'll feel a little resistance. This is just pulling the bolt in as you tighten the nut down. Okay, the bolts should be good to go. Then we'll put our filter back up. Remember to put this filter back in here. This is a breather. And we'll reach up by our filler neck and get it back in that hole. I have to move this over here. Okay, now we should have it all secured underneath the vehicle. We'll have to go back and we'll reconnect our rear shock here. Make sure it clicks in. And there we go. Okay, now we got this air pump replaced, and you can see this thing is in pretty rough shape with the big crack here and all. We need to get this shocks pressurized before we put the weight on the vehicle. You don't want to try to put all the weight on there and then get air in there. So to do that, we are going to lower the car down just so the tires touch the ground, but not where there's a lot of weight on them. And then we're going to key on the vehicle to try to get that pump to run. Okay, so this thing's not running, so we're going to try to start it up to see if that'll kick the pump on. If you're doing this in your garage, make sure you got good ventilation. You don't want to run it in your garage with the door closed like we have, but we got a hose on this thing, don't worry. Okay, so we still don't have this pump running. I'm going to try to lower the car just a little bit more. Don't put all the weight on it, just a little bit. Let's see if we can get that pump to kick on. Okay, so I did not get the pump to run by lowering the vehicle down. I actually had to disconnect both ride height sensors on the frame, and I actually unscrewed them so I didn't break the plastic. And then I lifted them up and kind of just wedged them on the frame here to make that pump run. And then I let the pump run for about 15-20 seconds, just enough to get some air in the shocks. And at that point, it should be good to put the ride height sensors back, lower the vehicle down, and then start it and just kind of let it get to the ride height that it wants to be before you take it for a ride, before you drive it anywhere. I hope this video helped you out. Thanks for sticking with us through the whole thing. If it helped you out or you liked it, hit that subscribe button, click the bell icon if you want to get notified when we make another video. Otherwise, thanks for watching.